Who is this Santa? He's scaring my kid.
Yeah, he's scaring me too.
Good to see you again, Damien. How you doing today?
Good to see you, buddy, and thank you. You guys are always so supportive of this franchise. So very good to see you, man.
Well, you're keeping it alive and fresh with so many crazy new ideas, and Terrifier 3 really does just expand the franchise nicely, not only in its kills, but also in its world building and with both Vicky and Sienna's characters. I love everything that's going on. So I know you've talked before about wanting to bring Vicky back into this one to really sort of develop her further. What was sort of the big key goal for you in bringing her back and showing her as sort of this villain in comparison to what we saw in previous films?
Yeah, well, that character always fascinated me. I mean, it always excited me where we left off with her, because it's just not it's not the most typical thing where you have this final girl who or the character we set up to be the final girl, who then turns into a monster. Basically, I mean, she loses her mind and she becomes a murderer, and then just finding a way to keep her a thread through the movie. And in part two, she plays a pivotal role, and she plays now one of the most important roles in the entire franchise. I mean, she's essentially possessed by the little pale girl, the apparition that is the little pale girl in part two. Takes Art the Clown's head, brings it into another dimension, possesses Vicky because she's a broken character and she's susceptible, one of Art's victims, and basically, is able to rebirth Art the Clown into existence, and she's able to embody her and live in the flesh. And I thought that was so cool that, that character now has a way to interact with anyone, and you learn what the ultimate goal of that evil is, and why it chose Art the Clown, and how Sienna becomes sort of anointed to combat that character, how all these puzzle pieces start to come together. So, it's so different than anything that I'd seen in a slasher film before. And it was one of the things that excited me, that I could really explore this supernatural aspect of the evil, and what brings your boogeyman back to life. Why do they suddenly become supernatural? I really wanted to explore that as if it was a character, instead of just sort of glossing over it and saying it's just the trope, it's what the boogeyman does. And that's become one of the most exciting things to me. And it was super exciting to see what Samantha Scafidi could do with the role now, because it was unlike anything she'd ever done or anything we really explored before with the character. And now we've just turned her into this ultimate evil, who's basically, I wanted to make sure she didn't become a sidekick, because you don't owe it to Art the Clown, because you don't want Art the Clown to become overshadowed by anyone. That's it's a risky move. Art the Clown's doing just fine on his own. He doesn't really need villains, but this character, it was so organic, it was so necessary as I was writing this. And she's got some of the great scenes in this movie. I mean, after the first premiere at Fantastic Fest, audience members were saying that she was, the MVP, and she really stood out to them. So that was exciting to hear. I'm excited for people to see her character.
I love the way that you work her back in. And like you say, I love how you're exploring the supernatural nature of all of this rather than just let it be unexplored. One lore question I did have for you, though, in this film is that we see that there's a 5-year time jump. And in the first film, or in the second film, there was a 1-year time jump between the films. But why is there a specific reason why there's a 5-year jump between the second and third one? Is it for Art's sake? Is it for Sienna's sake?
No, it's for the only reason is because Elliot Fulham just aged out so much from from part 2 to part 3, because we started shooting part 2 in 2018. And now by the time this movie comes out, it's 2024. So, I mean, we had to really compensate for that gap. And how did that happen? I would have loved to have this take place 1 year after. Well, not even. It would have been 2 months after the events of Terrifier 2. I would have went right into that following Christmas, but it wouldn't have made sense because Jonathan's just he's so much older. Plus, we were getting lost in the time frame where it was just we were like years behind reality. So I wanted to get it up to speed and have it just be like contemporary. It's taking place now. It's not still taking place in like 2017 or 2018. So that was the reason why I did it. And it was interesting to figure out, well, what the hell is Art the Clown up to for 5 years? Why? What is it? And I thought it was funny. I liked what I decided to do with the characters for that amount of time. So it worked out. But that's really the reason why it was a 5-year gap.
Gotcha. Well, I think it works. And also, I do think it works for Sienna's character as well, to sort of allow her to get some process time in before throwing her right back in the fire. So we've talked a little bit about exploring sort of the supernatural side of things and building that world out more. And, I remember talking with you last time. One of the things you said was you wanted to make sure that 3 wasn't quite as long as 2, since 2 did come with a hefty runtime. But I'm curious, in trying to build out the world for future installments while also still telling a full story in this one, how hard was it for you in the editing bay to really hone that down to the 125-minute runtime we have now?
It's very difficult because, like you said, I didn't want it to be another 2-hour and 20-minute movie. Not for me. I don't mind that runtime. It's very hard for an audience to take these days, which is a little disingenuous because I think it's just become more of a negative talking point just because it's a slasher film and they just get they're like the audacity to have it that it's this long, and people say like, oh, there's so much filler. It's like, don't tell me what filler is. Like, that's not filler. Filler is having an 80-minute movie that you don't have enough material to make an 80-minute movie. So in between your slasher kill scenes, you just have characters walking around, smoking a cigarette. You just that's filler, is purposely trying to pad out your runtime. I don't purposely try and pad out my runtime. I have tons of material of a story to tell. You know what I mean? So, again, like making part 3, I had like a 2-hour and 25-minute cut originally, and there were already scenes that I didn't even bother editing because I knew it was just, I could have gotten by without them, and it was just going to add to the runtime. So I had to cut out a lot of scenes, maybe like 6 scenes in the film that aren't in Terrifier 3 that are on the cutting room floor. So this could have been another epic movie. What people don't realize is, it's not the drama and the scenes in between the kills that add to the runtime. It's the kills and the Art the Clown set pieces that make these movies so unorthodox and so long. In your typical slasher film, Michael Myers and Jason and Freddy, they don't have these scenes of foreplay with the character for 5 minutes before they go into a 3-minute kill scene. You know what I mean? So it's just a different character. It's a different way of telling the story. Like in part 3, you have an opening cold open that's 10 minutes long that serves as its own sort of short film that nobody's complaining about the runtime of that scene. It's one of the best parts of the movie, but that's what makes it so long. It's these scenes that everybody loves that really add to the runtime, but then they'll complain about the scenes in between. They're like, oh, well, we didn't need those characters talk. If I took out those characters talking in between and all that stuff, you would not care about a single person in these movies. So it's just that it's an unorthodox method of telling a slasher film, and it's a different character. I mean, people enjoy seeing this character, mess with its, toy with its victims for a while before he kills them. And also you don't want to do that just once. People want to see a high body count. They want to see him kill as many people as possible. So it's a very tricky balance with these films to not go too long, but also give them everything that I know they like. And if I took it out, then they'd really be pissed off. So it's tricky. But there's, filler is they use that word wrong.
I couldn't agree more, because the scenes in between are definitely not filler. I really like the way that you flesh out these characters and build on them. And so in talking about the extended cut, because when I talked with Lauren yesterday, she had mentioned that some of the scenes involved her and her cousin. Have you thought about doing like an extended cut release at some point, or are you just going to keep those scenes for like a deleted scenes for when the home media comes out?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think I'd mind releasing an extended cut. I mean, I wouldn't call it the director's cut, because the director's cut is the scene that you're getting in the movies. Basically, it is the one that I'm happy with, the one that I didn't mind putting out. But there are some really good scenes that unfortunately didn't make it, and scenes that really flesh out, especially the relationship between Sienna and Gabby. But So we'll see. I don't mind. Releasing an extended cut. Those scenes, they came out really good, and I think people should see them.
Well, hopefully we get it, because I know I would personally love to see it. I love that relationship in this film. It's such a moving one to watch. And so I got to talk about the kills as well. I mean, so obviously the bedroom scene in 2 was quite gruesome, and some people found it to be the biggest one of the franchise thus far. How hard was it for you to find something to top that going into 3?
It's always difficult because the pressure is always mounting. The expectations get higher and higher as we go on. When David and I do conventions, it's one of the most popular questions we get asked is, how are you going to top the previous kill scene? Do you think you topped it this time? Do you think it's like, oh boy? It's like, so I always aim to try my best, and I try and hope, I hope inspiration strikes when I'm writing these scenes. It's, you never know where it's going to come from, or, because there's only so many things to do to the human body. We're not just competing with ourselves in these movies. Like, we're competing with every other Saw movie, every other movie that comes out with these brutal kill scenes. Like, almost everything's been done. So, but the, sort of the theme of Terrifier's kills has always been sort of taking traditional kill scenes that you've seen a million times, but then putting another spin on it. Because Art's not very elaborate. He's not Jigsaw, where he's coming up with these crazy contraptions or these machines to, which are amazing. I'm just saying, like, he's just grab a weapon and kill somebody. But it's just do it in a very different way, or a more graphic way, or just putting a twist on it. So for this film, it was one of my favorite, kind of started with nothing to do with Terrifier. So I'll watch horror movies that I love, and one of them is Psycho, one of my favorite movies of all time. And I watch it once, twice a year. And, I say, like, wow, if Hitchcock made that today, would he shoot that the same way? Would he be a little more graphic with the way it's portrayed? Would he show more penetration with the knife? I said, I know if I was given, the opportunity to remake Psycho or something, which I'll never get that opportunity. I said, I would show everything that knife could possibly do. It'd be the most graphic scene you've ever seen. And now, since no one's going to let me remake Psycho, I'll just say, well, I'll make my own shower kill scene, and I'll make it as crazy as possible. And instead of a knife, I'll give Art a chainsaw. Instead of it being one person in the shower, I'll put 2 people in the shower. And that's sort of how a scene like that, is birthed in your head. That's the inception. And then it just becomes, well, what could we do? Like, how many gags could we fit into this sequence? How many limbs could we show him chopping off? What are some interesting things he can do with that chainsaw, etc.? And that's how a scene like that unfolds. So I think when you do see Terrifier 3 and you get into the shower scene, be prepared.
That shower scene was pretty intense. I think for me, the one that got me was both the attic scene with the worker and a certain mother near the end of the film. I think those 2 were the ones that got me. But, like you say,
I'm glad to hear that, because especially the scene with the mother was supposed to be way worse. And I actually wound up trimming it a lot, where the shots that you do see are almost like subliminal, and everything is so fast. But even still, it's just like the idea of what's happening is so cruel and gruesome. So I'm glad that it worked for you.
I think that's definitely why it worked. What maybe was my imagination was running away with it and making it worse. Well, I see I have to go ahead and wrap, so I will get on out of here. But Damien, always great talk with you. Hopefully we can talk again soon to get into some spoilers, because obviously there's some big stuff that happens in the end for the future. So I really look forward to hopefully again chatting with you and diving into that.
Thanks, Grant. It would be a pleasure, man. Love talking movies with you.
Awesome. Have a great rest of your week, man.
Buddy.
Why would he come back here? Even if he was alive, which he isn't. Wouldn't you want to get as far away from here as possible, as far away from you?